The following program is brought to you by the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Visit us on the web.
I can feel the sweet wind blowing through the valleys and the hills. I can feel the sweet wind blowing as I go, as I go. I can feel the sweet wind blowing through the valleys and the hills.
Hi, I'm Dave Kelso. On today's show, we're on Big Lake in Princeton, Maine. Big Lake is home to one of the best smallmouth bass fisheries we have here in the state of Maine and possibly on the eastern seaboard. With me on today's show is Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife biologist Rick Jordan. Rick, glad to have you on today's show.
Thanks, Dave. Glad to be here.
On today's show, Rick's going to show us some of the tools that he uses to sample and maintain the bass fisheries that we have here on Big Lake, as well as some of our other area lakes. Rick, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We're going to see today our little miniature water temperature data loggers. We're going to see our electrofishing equipment, and then, of course, the old standby rod and reel fishing for bass.
Well, Rick, before we get into the technical stuff, let's go try the rod and reel fishing out here and sample some of the work that you guys have done.
Sounds good.
Rick, bass in the state of Maine are not native, are they?
No, they're not, Dave. Bass were introduced into the state of Maine first in 1869, and those were smallmouth bass. Largemouth bass were introduced later on in the 1800s.
And was this done primarily by the state, or was it done by, illegally by private individuals?
The early introductions were done by the state, but even as long ago as the 1950s, there were some illegal introductions taking place. Now what we find is the state isn't doing very many introductions, but we are finding that other people are taking matters into their own hands, and they're moving both smallmouth and largemouth around quite a lot.
Yeah, that's something that shouldn't be going on.
Once you get these illegal introductions that haven't been screened through the biologists, you can have all kinds of effects. They may be introduced into a brook trout pond, and in many cases they'll just take over, and that pond won't be able to be a brook trout pond any longer. And other cases, they're introduced, maybe largemouths are put in on top of a real good smallmouth fishery, and when that happens, sometimes the smallmouths end up having some adverse impacts. They don't do as well. They have to compete with the largemouths. So we really encourage people, if you've got a lake that you think you'd like to have bass introduced into, contact one of our state biologists, and if it makes sense, then we may go ahead and do it.
Well, that's an awful good point. I know that we've had some discussions amongst ourselves about where largemouths should be and where smallmouths should be, and I can honestly say that throughout all the conversations that we've ever had, you guys have been fairly open about why you don't want those fish in there, and you make some real good points after you sit down and you listen to the reasons as to why they don't want the certain species in certain lakes.
We are in the business of trying to create and produce fisheries in the state of Maine, so if it can be done safely without impacting other fisheries, then generally we'll try to do it. We have bass in a little more than 600 lakes and ponds out of our 2,000 large lakes and ponds in Maine. So they occur in just about 1/3 of all of Maine's lakes and ponds that are bigger than 10 acres.
Wow. And right up here in this area, I know we have 18 different lakes, all within an hour of here, that have bass in them. Everything from Big Lake to small ponds like Clifford.
Right, you're in a real gem area for bass in this part of Maine.
Some other places in the country might call themselves the smallmouth capital of the world, but if you ask me, They've got nothing on what we have here.
We talked to a lot of anglers who have come up here, and I say, you know, why did you leave down south with the bass fishing to come up here? Well, they said the catch rate up here is just so fast. We don't have that kind of a catch rate back home.
Oh, the catch rate up here during the month of June, you and I have seen it when we've been out sampling lakes before. Look how many fish you can catch in one day.
Absolutely.
I mean, 100 fish a day is not out of the question.
You can do it up here, a lot of these lakes. We used to do a lot of scuba diving as fishery biologists. We don't do as much of that now because we have the information on the sizes of bass in these lakes, but it was really interesting to scuba dive. We didn't free swim. We actually got towed behind the boat on about a 100-foot rope with a planing board, and we just hung onto the planing board and steered it like an underwater rudder.
Yep.
And we would go over all the good bass habitat along the lake shore, getting trolled along over the drop-offs, you know, maybe 2 miles an hour. And I'll tell you, by the time you spent 2 or 3 hours underwater in the lake, you really got a good feeling for the sizes of bass out there, the quality of habitat. But what we found back then in the early 1970s, it was very interesting to me. I expected bass to be kind of evenly distributed along all the good habitat, but that wasn't the way it was in July and August.
That's definitely not the case. I can see that here on this lake and a lot of the other lakes I fish. They're going to be bunched up where everything is right for them. The depth, the cover, and the amount of food that's available to them.
That's right. I'd go through, you know, I might go through several hundred yards of really good habitat, lots of boulders, good drop off, see very few bass, and then all of a sudden I'd come to one big boulder or one sheer ledge, a real nice drop off, and there'd be 40 to 60 bass all congregated together in there. And one day it was quite funny because we had been tagging bass on this lake. We wanted to study their movements and get tag recoveries. And we weren't able to catch very many, but I found this big bunch of bass underwater when I was scuba diving. So I popped up and I said to the guy in the boat, put a little lure on, give me the rod. And I went down, knelt on my knees with the scuba tank in 12 feet of water and proceeded to catch 8 bass, one right after another, just as fast as I could. They were like all competitive. And then, but when they got tired of it, when they got bored, that was it. It was over. And another time I had the underwater video camera and I was taking some video on one of these bass congregations off an island. And my partner was in the boat and he figured, well, I'll fish for an hour while Rick's down there. So when I came up, I said, how'd you do? I only got 1 fish, he said. I said, are you kidding me? There's 60 of them down there. I had to take him back to my house and show him the video of what he was fishing over. So, yeah, these bass concentrations, they're there, and they'll be in the same areas year after year. Look at that bait up there.
People say there's a bait shortage. There ain't in this lake, I'll tell you.
No, sir.
You ought to see Clifford Bay. This is nothing.
No kidding.
This is nothing.
Oh, that thing must be spinning.
Oh,
I saw that white guy. A spinning crankbait catches no bass. Still in 5-6 feet.
Yeah, I've kind of moved. I moved out just a little bit too much in the 8. We're throwing. It's the 6-foot mark's pretty much where we're throwing.
Yeah. Geez, I've had them come up. Sometimes when we're getting bass samples in the fall for transfers, I've had them, you go over 20 feet of water and marking fish, and you're throwing a repeller, which of course doesn't dive very deeply, and the bass, every pass through, you know, they'll come right up.
Holding. There we go.
All right.
Oh! Off he. Oh, there he is. He's back.
All right. Oh, nice one.
There we go. Oh, yeah.
There's some tail walking.
I can't believe that. He hit, I lost him, and he come right back.
He sure
this
did.
time he annihilated it, too.
All right. All right.
Oh, we need pliers big time. He swallowed that thing. Look at that. He swallowed that thing.
Wow. I guess so.
Right down, I don't know if you can see that or not, but that thing is right down his gullet. There we go.
Yeah, you like that.
No, that's just a good average sized fish on this lake, but they're a lot of fun to catch. There we go.
Yep, there's another one, Dave, out of those weeds.
Okay.
All right.
That is
Comes right
just a
in,
little guy.
not a whole. All right. Fat. Oh, they're looking nice in here.
Okay. Now, Rick, a lot of people come up here, they do want to eat some fish. To me, that is the size fish that we really want to be keeping for eating, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. And the regulations that we've got up here on this particular lake, that's exactly the size fish we're trying to steer people to eat, into the 10 to 12 inches, because there's so many of them in this lake. We're fishing some habitat today that's designed to help us catch a little bit bigger fish. But if you go into the boulders, you can catch those, as you know, all day long.
You can catch those all day long, all year long. There's one. Oh,
All
that's a
right.
good one.
Good one?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. I got to stay off this log and keep him off the log at the same time. This should be
In the
interesting.
wind.
In the wind. Oh my word!
Gee,
look at
that's
that
a
one.
really nice one.
Look at that one. Oh. Oh, please, you're barely hooked. I
One
wanna get
hook in the
my
lip
hand
and
up
one
on
hook in
you.
the gill cover.
Oh, please. Oh, please, and no hooks in me this time. There we go.
Oh, nice
Oh, look
fish.
at that. Oh,
Nice.
it falls right out.
Now look what's coming out of his vent.
Look at that.
Isn't that fish has been caught before in a spinner, and the spinner and the snell of the snelled hook is coming right out the vent on this fish.
Look at that.
Here's a bass, 2.5 pounds plus.
And that hook just falls right out nicely.
Whoa, yes sir.
Now,
Yeah,
Rick, what should I do with? Should I trim that off?
I'd trim that off, definitely.
Okay. Look at that.
Let's have a look at that. Turn that right around like that. Yeah,
Wow.
look at that. Yeah,
Oh, there's a hook in there. So
yeah. I
shouldn't
wouldn't
pull that
pull too
anymore.
hard, but
No.
all
There.
right. Hey, you did him a favor.
I did him a big favor. That's a good smallmouth right there. Oh, he wanted to take my thumb with him.
You know, it's amazing the high amount of catching the same bass over and over that occurs on these lakes.
Oh yeah.
Back when we first started sampling West Grand Lake, we went into one particular cove, and in the process of a few afternoons of fishing, we put a fin clip, the top of the tail fin, just a temporary fin clip, on 70 bass in there. Well, later on that summer, I talked to 2 different guides who had been in there with some of their sports. They caught a total of 28 bass. 27 out of the 28 that they caught had their tail fin clipped. They were ones that we had caught, and then they recaptured them. Now the point is, if they and other anglers like them had been inclined to kill their limit, there would have been far fewer bass in there to be caught.
Never would have seen that many fish caught over the course
That's
of a
right.
year. Well, Rick, you've lived up here just quite a bit of your life. I've been living up here now for 7 years. One of the neat things I like about this area, I mean, you look around, we're surrounded by woods, and it seems like you're off in the middle of nowhere, which pretty much you are. But yet, just a short drive from here, you have the coast.
Right.
You got the ocean. And, you know, a lot of people come to Maine primarily to see the ocean, and this is an area where they can come up here and do both. Because you're kind of involved with a business on the coast. You and your wife have a boat tour and a sea kayaking business.
Right.
You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, we started it 7 years ago. My wife got her Coast Guard captain's license, and so she takes people out aboard our 34-foot lobster boat on tours out of Machias Bay, and as part of it, they go out around the islands. They go out by Libby Island Lighthouse, and then they come up into the bay and they haul some lobster traps. People love seeing how lobster fishing is done and what comes up in the traps. At the end of the day, if they have a chance to cook lobsters where they're staying, she gives them a lobster apiece at the end of the tour.
Oh, there you go.
Then one of the other highlights is they go ashore on an island to see some Native American petroglyphs that were carved there 1,500 to 3,000 years ago, and those are really special.
Now, what can they expect to see out on those boat tours?
Well, they see lots of bird life.
Sure.
And some birds that they wouldn't see anywhere else except along the coast. We don't go to the puffin island. We occasionally see puffin, but she sees razorbills at times and lots of terns and shorebirds. Eagles, she almost always sees eagles, sometimes a half dozen. ospreys, great blue herons, things like that. And then in addition to the bird life and the ducks and the geese, you see seals, harbor seals, and
oh, they're all over the coast.
definitely.
Yeah.
And you know, these people that have come up here visiting Maine, they get quite a thrill to look at one of these seal haul-out ledges and see 100 or 150, 200 seals all
Sure.
just laying there in the sun.
Sure.
Then the other part of it is we take people out on sea kayaking tours out in the bay, and they also get to see the seals and the bird life. And on those tours also we go ashore on the island to show them those rock carvings that are 2,000–3,000 years old.
Now I imagine, I've never done any sea kayaking, but I've done it here on the lakes, and I know how close I can get to the loons and the moose on the lake. You must be able to get fairly close to the seals in the kayak, can't you?
You can't get real close to their ledges before they go in the water, but then they'll swim around and they don't appear frightened, and they pop up all around the kayaks.
Oh,
and
yeah.
People often note, boy, they look really inquisitive. They have a puppy dog face. And just 2 weeks ago, we had one seal that followed us about a half mile, and he kept putting his nose right behind the rudder of the kayaks, and there was kind of a drag there, like from a race car.
Yep.
And he was spinning corkscrews around, and he went from one kayak to the other, and people just couldn't get over it.
There's one, Rick.
Good.
Just a little guy, but there's a ton of these in Big Lake.
On their way to growing up.
Now, how old's a fish like this?
Oh, a fish like that's probably 5 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's amazing. They can go they grow a couple inches real quick, and then they slow right down after
Right,
that.
2–3 inches a year for the first 3 or 4 years, and then they slow down once they get mature and start to spawn. They divert a lot of their energy to spawning. There's also some really tremendously beautiful coastal hiking trails along the coast, anywhere from West Quaddy Headlight and Lubeck back through towards Cutler, the Bold Coast Trail, Western Head Trail, then over around Beals Island and Great Wass. There's some trails over there, and Cobscook Bay State Park has some trails. So I find that people that come up here, if they don't have to have hubbub and shopping malls, they find an awful lot to do in the outdoors, beautiful coast. They really enjoy it. There is.
It's varied. You don't have to just spend your whole vacation on the coast. You can split it up, go between the coast and our inland lakes.
A lot of these people like to get on the inland lakes for a day of fishing, or even most of a week of fishing when they come up here. There's one.
There's one. Got him?
Yeah.
Wow.
That feels kind of decent.
Wow. Uh-oh.
Hopefully it's not a pickerel in the weeds.
Uh-oh.
You want to have a look at him, I suppose. False alarm.
False alarm.
Like I said, along the edge of that weed bed, there ought to be something.
You know, anytime a big pickerel's involved, there's usually blood.
Yeah, one way or another.
Hey, look at that. No hooks, no teeth.
Bloodless release. That was a miracle.
That was. That's one thing that this lake has no shortage of. Any of our lakes up here, for that
Eastern
matter.
Maine has got pickerel. Hey, there's another one, Dave.
All right. Oh, that's not a bad size one.
Not bad. Another jumper.
Cold weather is kind of making them a little sluggish here. There we go.
All right.
Yeah, just another average size smallmouth for Big Lake.
I haven't met anyone that wouldn't like to catch those all day long.
I know. Those are, geez, and these little ones seem like they're on steroids when you catch them.
That's right.
That's
yeah.
for sure. Oh, come out of there. Come out of there. Down in the trolling
Oh,
motor.
all right. Beauty.
There we go. Finally.
Yeah, you like that spinnerbait.
Yes. Well done.
All right,
yes.
Dave.
Oh, yes. Ah. Oh, I'm telling you, I am just going to get hooks in my fingers all day today. Now, how old, Rick, all the work you've done, how old is a fish like that going to be?
Well, we can't age those that size by scales, but we have looked at some otoliths, which is the ear bone, and some of those are 15 to 20 years old.
That's just incredible. That is just incredible.
is,
That's just
yeah.
one more reason why somebody shouldn't kill a fish that big.
That's right. You kill a fish like that, it's going to take the lake 15 or 20 more years to replace it up to that size.
That's just incredible.
And fortunately in Maine, you know, most people, when they bass fish, they want to catch and release fish. They're not, most of them aren't fishing for meat.
So, wow, let's see if we can get a couple more like that.
All right.
Okay. Rick, as we've seen today, big lakes get some pretty fantastic smallmouth fishing. Let's face it, a lot of this is due to some of the work that you guys do on this lake. There's no doubt about it. You brought some of the equipment that you use to monitor these fish out here. Why don't you explain some of it to our viewers at home?
What we've got first in this little waterproof plastic case is a water temperature data recorder. It's all a little computer chip, and we set this up at the office so that it will record a water temperature once every hour right through the season. We put them in the lake the last week of April or the first week in May, and we remove it from the lake the first week of November. And so we have a running water temperature record of how warm or how cool the water temperature was for the complete growing season on the young bass.
Now that gives you an idea how good the survival rate's going to be and the growth rate of the fish during the course of their first summer.
That's right. That's right. The survival of little bass, young of the year bass, smallmouth bass particularly, is dependent on the size that they reach at the end of their first growing season.
Now, this other piece of equipment you got looks pretty formidable here. You want to explain just to our viewers at home what this is?
This right here is a backpack electrofisher unit, and it's something that probably every angler would like to have for himself, but they're not legal unless you're a fisheries biologist. What we have is we have a battery down here that powers it. It's just a gel cell battery. And then the unit up here converts that direct current to whatever voltage we want and however many pulses per second. Normally on our lakeshore electrofishing for young of the year bass, we use 500 or 600 volts and 60 pulses per second. One end of the electrode trails behind us right here. We just call that the tail. And then this one over here called the wand, we have a switch right in front of your hand, and when you depress that switch, it sends the power out through the hoop electrode. That electrode will be in the water, and we go along the bouldery habitat right along the lakeshore when we're shocking for young of the year bass. When that electricity goes into the water, the fish react by their muscles contract and pulse, and it makes them swim right towards the strongest electricity, which is right at the hoop electrode, and our dip netter just dip nets them up. It's a great way to catch fish. You wait till you see.
Oh, we got a pretty good place to try this right here, Rick. What do you say we give it a shot?
Sounds good. All right, let's see if we can find some young of the year smallmouths right in these boulders. There's one right there. Oop. Crayfish down there. Let's see what that is. It's not a bass, I don't think. See what we got there. Yeah, small sunfish right there. We can just throw him back because we're looking for the bass.
That's amazing. I mean, he just come right out of the rock.
Yeah, there's two right down there on bottom. These are
there's one right
there's
there.
A bass. See if you can get right under him, Dave. Boy, that's a big one.
Look at that.
Holy, look at the fat stomach on that.
That's a young of the year bass right there.
Most likely it is. That's a really big one. That's about as big as you usually
unreal.
see.
If that was hatched out this year. Now, what do I do with him now?
Just keep him in your hand a second. We'll see if we can get one or two more right over here, Dave.
Alrighty.
See how it pulls them right out,
Oh, it does. That is amazing.
Great way to fish.
How come I can't get one of these mounted on the front of my boat?
What we're going to do right now is we're going to get a length on this young of the year bass. Okay, this is a big one for a young of the year smallmouth. It's 86 millimeters long, which is just about 3.5 inches. And you can see he's been feeding very well.
Look at the belly on that thing. That is just phenomenal.
We have occasionally found bass this big to have 2.5-inch long other fish in their stomach, particularly like in this lake system we have a few cusk, and cusk is kind of long and skinny, and we've found 3-inch bass with 2.5-inch cusk in their stomach.
Wow,
so
that's amazing.
They do switch their foods from plankton as early young fry, then they switch over to insects, and when they get a little bit bigger, even in their first few months of age, they'll switch over to fish.
That's simply amazing.
Well, we'll throw this one back.
Rick, that's really something. I am impressed with that machine. Now, when you show up those little fish, how long does it take them to come back to life after you do your measurements and your weights and stuff?
Usually on the little bass, they come right to in just a few seconds. If the electricity was on a little longer, it may take a half minute or so. But the bigger the fish, the stronger they're knocked out. And we did have a sunfish there that was about 4 inches long, so he might take a minute or two to come to.
Okay, so it just doesn't really hurt the fish. This only allows you just to get them, get your sample, and get them back in the water.
Right, it's a great method of sampling.
Well, he's not a huge one, but he's one of those fun size.
Oh yeah. Right.
He's
Hey!
off of the boat here. There you go. Okay, Guy, you ready? Yes, you are. There we go.
Little darker color on that one, not as green.
He's been in the weeds a little bit longer, I think.
Right here, Dave.
See if I can undo him. There we go. Another big leg smallmouth.
That's right.
Rick, I want to thank you for coming out here with us today and explaining to our viewers at home some of the things that you've done. As we've seen, I think you've done a great job on this lake, and I hope it stays this good for years to come.
We hope it stays good. Thanks a lot, Dave. I've enjoyed it.
I've had a great time, Rick. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us here on Down Dave Kelso. We'll see you next week. Today on Big Lake, we were confronted with a passing cold front, wind out of the east, kind of made the fishing a little tough. Therefore, what we found we had to do was we had to go to a reaction type bait. The fish right now this time of year are swimming across the grass flats chasing bait fish, so we decided to try lipless crankbaits. We had two colors that worked really well. One was the Fire Tiger. This primarily is just a reaction bait. There's really no bait fish that are colored like this. The bass were just seeing it go by them real fast and swiping at it. The other one that we were using was a Yo-Zuri Pro Vibe, as I've got tied on my rod here. It kind of imitates the yellow perch color. It's got a chartreuse greenish back with a clear translucent body. As you can hear, all kinds of rattling noise to attract the fish, pull them out of the weeds. The other bait that we found that works real good, and this works real good any time of year when you're confronted with cold front conditions, is little tiny map spinner. The maps, the rooster tail, anything like that, inline spinners can work really well when you get real tough fishing conditions. The other thing that we did was we were retrieving the lures really fast. I was using a quantum reel that has a 6.2 to 1 retrieve ratio, using 8 to 10 pound test line, and just moving the lures, covering a lot of water as quick as we could and as much as we could.
Did you know that you can see moose, lynx, owls, eagles, and black bears all in one place? The Maine Wildlife Park in Gray is a great place for a wildlife outing with a chance to see Maine wildlife close up. We're open mid-April through mid-November. Bring a picnic and spend the day. Brought to you by the people who manage Maine's fish and wildlife for you. The Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. Visit our website to learn more.